I'm going to show you a method to set up Laravel with Angular. Now you can use any JavaScript framework such as React or Vue or Nuxt. The only caveat is you need to be able to control where you send or publish the build or distribution files within the framework, and I'll show you that in just a second with Angular. But this method is good if you want to be able to add Angular to an existing project or a new one, and if you have an API ready to go. This also helps you keep Angular within the same repo, but you can extract it out later and put it in a separate repo if you want. But this is very unobtrusive and easily removable and revertible for any changes. Now you can go to this link right here and you'll be able to see the project files that I'm using here. So I published it to this repo, hot sauce jake laravel-angular, so that should be easy enough to find. Now I'm going to start this method with a new install. You do not have to, but I'll show you where to put the files if you have an existing install. So with that, I'm just going to do Laravel new, Laravel Angular, and we'll create a new project. Now, when I first did this, I upgraded my Laravel version to 8.x, my installer, but I came across an error that was a 522 origin connection timeout. And just to solve for that, all you have to do is remove the installer from your global composer file and then require it again. Just basically reinstall it. And I can show you the commands for that as soon as this finishes building. But an overview while this is building is we're just going to take the publish files, the distribution files, and move it into Laravel's public folder. And then we'll copy the index.html file that is generated to a Laravel blade that we have created. We'll edit a web route, and then that's pretty much all there is to it. So again, if you're having trouble and you're getting like a connection timeout, a 522 error, basically those commands are composer global remove Laravel installer, and then you'll issue that command, and then you'll do global require Laravel installer, and that'll reinstall it. That's just if you had a problem just like I did. Okay, so now we have this Laravel repository, so I should be able to go to Laravel Angular like this. Alright, cool. So I'm going to do a git init just so we can track the changes here. Show you all the files that were added. So if I add them and commit, I'll do an initial commit. That way any changes moving forward we'll be able to see. I'll show you what files we changed and whatnot, and then we can commit them. So I'm going to open this up in Visual Studio Code. Here is my folder and terminal, just in case we need the terminal. So the first thing we're going to do is in this resources folder here, we're going to create a new folder called frontend. So this method will allow you to add more than just one JavaScript framework. So if you want to test out a bunch with a existing project, this is what you'll do. So again, if you ever want to revert these changes, all you got to do is just delete this folder, and then anything we publish into the public folder, and then revert your changes from the routes.web file. But for now, I'm going to create a new folder called actually I will not create it here, I'll do it from the command line. So if I go into resources front end, I should have an empty folder here. So what I'm going to do is I've already installed the Angular installer as well. So I'm just going to go npm install -g for global Angular CLI. So that will install it globally. So you can just issue a command just like Laravel does to create a new Angular project. So this will create an Angular folder here within my front end folder. So all of the files will be just yes. So we want to do Angular routing because we're gonna we don't want Laravel to handle the routing on the front end specifically. So I'll show you how you can avoid any mix-ups with the API, and then I'll just do SCSS, I reckon. Alright, so this Angular folder is being created and then packages are being installed. So next what we're going to do is edit the angular.json file and the package.json file. But before we even do that, we can create a new view in Laravel for Angular to use. And I'll show you what I mean by that as soon as this stops installing. And then lastly, we'll create an Angular controller that will serve up the front end, which will be used by the routes web.php file. And then we'll edit that file as well with one line. And then I'll show you how to run and build this project. And so you can work on it through dev. So you can watch any changes that happen to it, or you can build it for production. So again, let me just show you. The only thing that's changed in here is I added a resources front end folder, and then if I list that, it'll be a resources front end Angular. So there's all the files for the Angular. So git commit install Angular. Alright, cool. So alright, now what we need to do is we'll create that view for Angular here. So what I mean by that is, so resources, views, new file. I'm just going to call this one angular.blade for consistency, but you can call it whatever you want. It doesn't even have to be the framework name, just as long as you know that this file needs to be blank initially, and we'll use Angular here to publish the index.html file to this Angular blade. So we have a new file. Create Angular view for Laravel. Okay. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to edit the angular.json file, and this will tell us where to build our publish file, and where to publish also all the assets that go along with it. So we want to publish these files into Laravel's public folder, because that's what will show up in the index of your website. And there's a couple of options that we need to change here. So first off, in this angular.json file, we need to find the output path within production. So it's going to be in this projects architect build, and then we're looking for configurations under here, and then production. And so what we need to do to this one is, under production, we need to add two options here. So production here. So we have an output path here. So that goes up a folder, up a folder, up a folder, which is this public one. So if you specifically do not put it in this front-end Angular folder, you'll need to make sure this output path where it's getting published is the correct one. So following this convention, up one folder, up one folder, up one folder, and now we're going into public, and we'll publish these files into assets Angular. So it'll create a new folder in here called assets, and then a new folder called Angular, and then it publishes all the asset files for that. And then deploy URL. So this is handy for when it publishes the actual index.html file, it'll know where to find these assets and serve them up properly. Now, we'll actually need one more section added to this. So under configurations here, we have a production, but now we need to make a dev configuration so that when we serve this and watch this, we can see all the changes live. And then for that, we're just going to do two options. So again, this one's going to be output path, and it's going to go into the distribution folder, assets, Angular, and then that's local here to this front end Angular. So it'll create a new folder up here called dist, and then it'll publish in the assets/Angular. Now we need one more, and so when we're serving this, we know that the base href is going to be assets Angular. So in your browser, if you're watching this, it'll just go to your local host /assets/Angular. It won't be just localhost at port 4200, which is usually what Angular uses. It'll be /assets/Angular. So that's the only thing you really have to live with this being in the same project folder as Laravel. And then one final thing we need to do is in the project architect, and then we need to find the serve. Here it is. Serve option, and then in the configuration here, so we have one for production, and then now we need to make one more again for dev, if I can type, and then this option in here is going to be browser target Angular build dev. So we have Angular build production, which is already made by default with Angular. We just need to make one for dev, and that will be it for the angular.json file. So again, what this is doing is it's for production specifically, it's publishing all the files to this public folder, and then we'll have an assets/Angular folder that will also be created, and then everything placed in there. So git edit angular.json file. Alright, cool. So we have a clean project so far. So the last part with Angular specifically, and then this will apply to any framework, you need to be able to control where these published files go, just like in the Angular JSON, but now we need to be able to copy anything that's generated for the index file to go to that Angular blade that we made previous. So that'll be in this package.json file here. You have your scripts. This is where you build your production and whatnot. And one thing I like to do on this ng serve is I like to configuration equals dev, so it knows that it's serving those dev files and watching for it in that distribution folder that we created. And then one option I like to do is this -o, which will open your default browser, so it'll go to the local host 4200 in that default spot there. Now we need to add a build prod option for when we're ready to build the distribution files and place them in Laravel's public folder. Remember, we changed the output path in angular.json to place them there. So now we need to add a line under this build for build prod. And I'll show you how to use all this, which will be just ng build here. /prod. So that's telling it to do the prod flag. And then this is where the magic happens. So we need to copy the file in the public assets Angular index.html. So we're copying this file that's in this public folder that will appear there under assets Angular index.html, so where it's actually served. And then we need to copy that to the views we created, which was angular.blade.php. So it's copying this file here that's generated in public to, so we go up, and then we're in resources and views, and then it'll copy that index.html file there. And then that's all we need to edit on the package.json. And I'll show you how to serve this project as well with your Laravel project. So let's do get status, get add, get status again. Okay, get commit, and we'll edit the package.json file. Cool. So we have a clean directory again. Alright, now we need to create a controller so we can return this view that we created. This view down here, this angular.blade. So to do that, you do php artisan make controller, and you can call this anything you want, like front-end controller, but to keep it consistent, I'm just going to call it Angular controller, and then it'll create a, let's do a get status, show you. So it creates that here. I'll just open it in the editor, but it's under a app HTTP controllers Angular controller. So within this one, all we have to do is make a index function and return. I do like it better when it's down here. Return a view, which is the Angular view. And that's it for that controller. So now, how do we serve this route for all routes so that we can use the Angular routing instead of Laravel's, while ignoring anything that precedes it with an API? Well, that is actually simple. So we'll do route any. That's a special command for any, and then we'll do any here. And actually, first we need to import the Angular controller we're about to use. App HTTP controllers Angular controller there, and then we need to reference this Angular controller. So for here, I'm just not using the string way. I'm just using the actual class static method there, and then it'll be an index, and then this is, I'm going to copy paste this and leave it up for a second. So all this is saying is if any equals API, so if you have my site.com, anything blah blah, it'll rely on Angular's routing in order to serve this content here. However, if this right here is API, that's what this is saying, where any is API here, then bypass this Angular controller and go to whatever that is. So if you have an API set up, then this will go to the API routing here, and just work as it should. That's why these projects can coexist on the same server. You don't have to create a different repo and then have a different subdomain. You can have it on the same domain. And then again, just to remove this, all you'll have to do is just remove this web route, and then it'll just work again as intended. If you have any existing routes here, you can just comment those out, or adjust this here to use them as necessary. And then lastly, if you wanted to remove it, all you do is just remove this front end folder and then anything that gets published in this public folder. And I'll show you that in just a second. So let me save that. Git add, git commit, create controller, and edit web route. Alright, so we are clean again. So in order to run and build this project, and I'll show you locally first. Firstly, I'm using Valet in order to serve my Laravel projects. And what it does is it just creates like an Nginx, a limp stack for you locally so that you can use it. And it's really cool. You can look it up on Laravel's website. Since I am running Linux here, there is a port called Valet for Linux. And then that is exactly what I'm using here. So if I do a Valet links, it'll show me all the links that I have as a working project inside of on my computer here. I already have a Laravel Angular, and that was from the project that you see on GitHub. So I'll just call this one something different. You can do Valet link within the project folder, and then it'll serve it whatever that folder is called. But however, since I already have one, I'm just going to use Angular for this. So what that means is if I go to angular.test in my browser, unexpected view, I will see the website being served, but right now I have an error. So let's figure out what that is. So that's going to be in my routes web. Nope, that will not be in my routes. That'll be in my Angular controller up here. I must have mistyped something. Oh, whoops. There we go. Return, view, Angular. Save that. Refresh this, and I should see my... Oh, so it's returning the actual view. So here, let me show you that it was. Let me copy this first. That it was working. We'll Control Z this until I get the default. Okay, save that. We'll refresh here. So my Laravel project is working, and this is Laravel 8 as of this video. So, and then all I have to do here is that import it. HTTP. There it is. All right. Save that. And since this view is blank right now, that's all it's serving, right? So let's get this working with Angular, actually. Let me move this out of the way. So I'm going to, now that I have Valet and a link to go to, that's all that was showing, I'm going to go to Resources, Front End, and then my Angular project folder. And then to build it for production, you would run, oh, actually we have to, oh, it was already installed. npm run build prod. And then what this is doing, package just must be not JavaScript. Ah, I must have had something. Yep, no comma. Alright, forgive these typos, but at least you get to see all of these commands. So let's do a commit here. Typo fixes. It's the problem of doing it live. Ah. Typo fixes. Alright, now let's go back in here and run npm run build prod. So that was the command we created here in the package.json, which will build the distribution files and then take all of the take the index file here, copy it to the new Angular blade that we made as well. And that's all that is doing right now. It shouldn't take too long. The first, well, we'll see. The first time, I guess it always takes a while. Okay, that wasn't long enough. Forgive me. So what that did, so essentially we should be able to refresh our index now because it's serving this Angular blade, and then see some Angular files. So let's do that live. Okay, cool. So Angular is now up and running. So anytime any route you type here will be served and used by Angular's routing, except if you have /API up there, like we specified in that file. So let me show you what happened here. So we modified the Angular.blade. Where's that? Here. So it copied the contents of the index.html file that was published here in the public assets index here, because that's what is being served, and put it in the Angular blade because that's what's being served up by the Laravel route. And then of course it published all the rest of the assets in this public assets Angular folder. So if you had different frameworks, you could make it so that it publishes to a public assets / Vue, for example, or any other type of framework I guess you want to use. So let's alright, so secondly, I can show you how to work on dev with this locally. So what you would do here is just type npm start. It'll build it, and then it should open it in my browser here once it's done building, and then it'll serve it that. See, so it does the localhost 4200. You'll just have to live with assets / Angular as your base URL there, but any routing hereafter will be served by the Angular project. And that is pretty much it. So I've already showed you how to revert these changes if you want, and then how to serve it locally. And then again, these projects will be at hotsauce jake /Laravel -Angular, and you can see all the changes there, especially if you just look at the commit history. I did pretty much the same there. Alright, hope you enjoyed and hope this helps.